Welcome to the Empowering Family Caregiver Show. I'm your host, Susan Baida of eCareDiary.com, and today is Friday, February 11th. It's hard to believe, time flies so fast. And the nature of our show is really today about services for the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community, and what services are available for them as well as their caregivers. And today we have as our guest Hilary Meyer of the National Resource Center on LGBT Aging, which is part of the SAGE network, which is the services and advocacy for the gay, lesbian, transgender community. Correct?
That's correct, Susan, and thanks for having me. The National Resource Center on LGBT Aging was set up as a function of it's really a recognition by the U.S. Administration on Aging that the LGBT community has a specific set of needs that, especially as folks age, are not necessarily being addressed. There's the resource center itself its goal is to improve the lives of LGBT elders by both a training mandate and through our website that has a number of resources available to folks.
Terrific. So let's before we go into the details of the National Resource Center, I'd love for you to tell and share with our audience what are some of the specific issues that LGBT older adults face, as well as their caregivers.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, there have been a number of studies that show that LGBT older adults are twice as likely than their heterosexual peers to age alone, and they're 4 times as less likely than their heterosexual peers to have children, and 5 times less likely to access senior services than their heterosexual counterparts, and so a number of these have impacts on the caregiving community. As folks age, they rely oftentimes on their family, on their children, to be the caregivers, and without that, or with a much lower number, the LGBT community relies in different ways on non-familial relationship caregivers, their community members, their neighbors, their partners. So that it's related to caregiving. There really is a unique need to be mindful of these differences.
Yeah, and obviously there are, as I'm thinking about this, particularly if you're in this type of relationship, a lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual relationship. Obviously, there are the issues of marriage and the familial relationships. There are legal issues involved. Especially if you don't have legal rights or, for example, like advance directives for the person you're caring for. So I would imagine that probably brings a whole subset of issues.
It does, yeah. The lack of legal recognition for same-sex relationships poses a real problem in things like accessing Social Security benefits, Medicare. Some private health insurance companies aren't able to offer services, or they're able, but they're not required to offer services to non-married partners. So that does pose a number of issues for people accessing services.
Well, thank you for highlighting those issues. I think what I'd like to hone in on specifically are the caregivers now in the LGBT community. So you mentioned some things before. What are you finding? We first met at the the SAGE conference in November, and I was really very struck by some of the things that I learned. I mean, I think I had a general understanding of what the community faces, but I think some of the really deeper issues, the long-term issues impacting caregivers, are really incredible. So can you share some of those with us?
Sure. The LGBT caregiving community, which includes both LGBT older adults themselves and also the folks who are caring for them that don't necessarily identify as LGBT, are actually they're quite logical based on the things that we just discussed that you may think about. For example, because there is no legal recognition for partners, some folks don't have the they don't identify themselves as caregivers. They just think of themselves as a partner. Where in a straight relationship, a husband might be an obvious link for him to say, "I'm caregiving for my wife," and I think that some service providers have trouble with that as well. They have trouble making that link, and it's not because they are being intentionally discriminatory, but it's because it's not necessarily on people's radar to think, well, somebody might have a caregiver that's not legally related to this person. There's also, because of the number of folks that are aging alone, there's a huge community aspect to caregiving in the LGBT community that isn't necessarily present in other straight groups, where folks like neighbors and even ex-partners may be involved because people don't have children to rely upon. Sometimes they've been estranged from their family members, and so there's a particular need for service providers to recognize these folks without having to think too much that, oh, if this person is coming in with their neighbor who talks about the care that she's providing for her neighbor, then that really should that link should be made in terms of thinking, oh, well, this must be the primary caregiver, even though that person isn't identified as such.
Right. Don't assume that people coming into your facility are necessarily straight.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we talk to providers about, especially who work with caregivers, is to actually just ask questions, and to say, is this the person who provides the most care for you? Is this the person that we should be accessing if there's an emergency? There's a tremendous amount of assumption that folks are straight, and so when the service provider says, to a woman, do you have a husband at home, that can be very alienating for a lesbian, for somebody who might be fearful to say, no, but this is my partner. So without those assumptions, it's much easier for somebody to be forthcoming about their relationship.
That makes a lot of sense, and thank you very much for highlighting these key issues. I really want to almost delve into an entire show just about that alone, but we'll have to save that for next time. I'd love for you, to talk to us about some of the services that are available to either LGBT elders and their caregivers for LGBT people. So whether that's what you're working on right now, which is the National Resource Center for LGBT Elders, and
yeah, there are a few different service providers locally across the country. Unfortunately, there's really a lack of unique service providers for this community, but there are a few. There's the LGBT Aging Project, for example, in Boston, provides a whole support network in that area. The Transgender Aging Network in Milwaukee and Open House in San Francisco are a few that provide unique regional services. But on the national level, SAGE, which stands for Services and Advocacy for GLBT Elders, has established a program called SAGE CAP, which is SAGE is caring and preparing, and the idea is that we want to be able to provide services through access points such as the National Resource Center, where caregivers themselves can come and download information. There's a counseling aspect to it if you're in the New York regional area, or a technical assistance. So folks who are either caring for an LGBT person or an LGBT person themselves, and trying to think what ways can they prepare as they age, and establishing who is their primary caregiver, and things like getting advance directives in place. All of that is offered through SageCap and through the National Resource Center on LGBT Aging. And actually, excitingly, the website for the National Resource Center, which is lgbtagingcenter.org, is launching a whole caregiving section on at the end of March. So there's it's very timely and very exciting, and there will be a whole host of different frequently asked questions and things that folks should be thinking about, both as caregivers and as LGBT adults themselves, about things that they need to prepare as they age.
Right. There's a huge wave of attention, I feel, on caregivers this year, and in fact, 2011 is termed or coined the year of the caregiver. So your timing is perfect. I think it has certainly a lot to do with the fact that our first baby boomers are turning 65 as of this past January. So I would imagine this is a tremendous issue for the LGBT community. So.
That's true, and with the baby boomers, actually, we're looking at a generation that has, for the first time ever, been out for the majority of their lives, out of the closet, and so that actually is very exciting in terms of folks being comfortable and not necessarily feeling isolated from communities where that was historically an issue, but
perhaps their parents are probably in that older generation. That elder generation where they're maybe not as open about their sexuality.
Yes, and to be clear, there's there's still a lot of folks who identify as baby boomers who are still in the closet, and even more that think that they have to go back into the closet because of the fear of aging service providers, discrimination, and fear of their own peer stigma. But there are a number of folks who have been out, who wish to remain out, and are dedicated to trying to find the services that they need to successfully age. And one of actually the Resource Center's goals is to provide a comprehensive training for aging providers all over the country to brief them on culturally competent services for the LGBT community. So if you go to our website, there's ways to access that request for training.
That's terrific. So the website address is lgbtagingcenter.org. I think it's pretty straightforward and easy. And as you mentioned, the caregiving portion of the website will be available this coming March. And well, congratulations. And I know this is a new post for you. You just started in October, November. So congratulations and on getting the funding to make this possible. And I just want to thank you for being here today and telling our audience all about it. Are there any last words you'd like to share?
Well, thank you, Susan, and thanks to eCare Diary for talking about this issue and allowing our your caregiving audience to access our services. We appreciate all the work you're doing, so thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We'll definitely invite you back. We'd love to delve further into a lot of these issues that are very critical to the community. Thank you again for joining us, and join us next Friday for our next live video show. Thank you again, and have a great weekend.